Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Saturday, the morning after Arsenal have lost again for the 13th time in the Premier League, losing 1-0 to Everton at the Emirates last night, and the night after Arsenal fans made their voices loud and clear to owner Stan Kroenke with a fantastic protest outside the ground last night. That, for me, that was a big story. Look, I know Arsenal lost, we will get to that. I'm so fed up talking about football and Arsenal's terrible performances at the moment. I wanted to focus on the protest first of all, which I thought was a monumental moment in certainly Arsenal's recent history, the biggest protest I've certainly seen when it comes to Arsenal in my over 30 years of following this club as a fan and as a journalist. There's thousands and thousands out there. I mean, I got there late, as I told you. I couldn't leave until late, and by the time I arrived, it's sort of like 7:30ish, and I thought, is it still going to be going on? Because by 5 o'clock there was already hundreds, and by 6 o'clock, which was the time the process actually officially started, there was thousands. I saw all the videos before I left and got in my car to drive up to the stadium. But as I got up there, I had to dump my car quite a long way away from the ground because the police had closed off all the entrances, all the routes in. They weren't letting anyone in. They nearly didn't let me in on foot. I had to literally beg to get through. The first policeman was like, "No, you can't go through." I was like, "Mate, I've got to work. I've got to get to the match," and he wasn't having any of it. And then I asked to speak to his boss, and his boss finally let me through, and I ran towards the stadium. So I caught right at the end of it, but there was still thousands there. By the time I arrived at 7:30, all outside, gathered outside the Armoury. The placards, the banners, the chants, the flares. It just felt, I think, having not even heard football fans for such a long time because of them not being in grounds, just that noise and the feel, and it was really, really special just walking around. And lots of you recognised me and came up and spoke to me and said how great it was to be there. And so if any of you watching this, you saw me, then I hope you had a good day, a good evening, and I thought it was a really well put together protest. It passed through relatively comfortably. Yes, the place was left in a bit of a mess, which is a shame. I walked through after the game, and there was a big clean-up job to be done in the morning. And that's obviously a shame, but I think it's very hard for that not to happen when you have a protest of this scale kicking off. But it passed through, relatively peacefully. The police seemed happy. They kept their distance and watched on, didn't really get too involved. And it certainly made a massive, massive point to the wider football world. Whether Stan Kroenke cares, whether he even watched it over in the US, that's another thing. But the fact is, this is just the start of this movement. You can sense everyone that I spoke to when I was there yesterday. This wasn't just a one-off thing. This was a start. We'll probably see more protests of that regard, but we'll certainly see a lot more pressure now being put on the government to push through some sort of change when it comes to the ownership structure in football, and that's the long-term goal here. I think just driving out Stan Kroenke through protests is going to be difficult. Like I've said before, he rides these things out. He's cocooned himself over in America, so he's not here on the ground seeing it and feeling it and witnessing it every day. It's going to be a case of forcing through with the government's help and with football fans, wider football fans' help, to push through some sort of change that allows fans to get on board and owners not to be able to run the club like Stan Kroenke does. That's going to be what ultimately might push Stan Kroenke out, in my view. It was great yesterday walking through the crowd, seeing so many football shirts of other teams. I saw Chelsea, Manchester United, Leicester. Everyone was coming together. This wasn't just an Arsenal thing. Obviously, the majority was Arsenal, but there were other football fans involved, and that's what makes this movement so big. This isn't just about Arsenal. This is about football. This is about protecting the clubs that we love. It's about bringing them back to the fans and not just letting them be these playthings for these billionaires all around the world to do what they want with, to think they can do what they want with, to try and muscle through plans like we've seen with the Super League. That's what this is all about, and I thought it was just a really special feeling yesterday walking through those crowds and witnessing it all. And I hope it's just a start, and I know it's just a start from what I've spoken to. There's so many plans now from supporters groups at Arsenal to keep this momentum going. It does feel like there's a momentum behind it all. And I thought it was just a special, special night. So well done to you all who are there, who are involved. Keep it up, keep it up. This is just a start. This is what we want to see more regularly now, not just at Arsenal, but around other clubs as well, because this is a time to try and get the game back, to bring it back to the people, and hopefully we can continue on that. So well done, everybody involved. One of the sort of interesting side stories too yesterday, other than the game, was Daniel Ek, I don't even know, I think that's how he pronounced his second name, Ek, I don't know, he's the owner of Spotify, basically put out on social media that he's been a long-term Arsenal fan, watching them as a kid, and that he said if KSD want to sell, then I'm very happy to throw my hat in the ring. Obviously that gained an awful lot of traction on social media. The tweet got retweeted all over the place and shared all over the place, lots of excitement about it. It's easy for him to say that. Whether this was a bit of a publicity stunt and latching onto the sort of anti-Kroenke feeling, who knows. The only issue is that it's going to be very hard to tempt Stan Kroenke into just selling to another billionaire just for the sake of it. It's going to, like I said, it feels like if he is going to sell, it's going to have to be forced on him more through change from government and that sort of thing. I think it's going to be very hard for someone like Daniel to go and sort of lay down a couple of $1 billion on Stan Kroenke's table and say, look, this is what I'm offering. Do you want to sell or not? I mean, he's worth 4.4 billion. Is Daniel? I mean, that's tiny amounts compared to what Stan Kroenke's worth. Stan Kroenke's worth 8.2 billion, and that's before you even take his wife's bank balance into account. She's obviously the heiress to the Walmart empire over in the States. So, it's small change really when you consider 4.4 billion. Is that enough to really take over and run Arsenal? I don't know. Was it a PR stunt? I don't know, but it was certainly a big hint that he wants to be involved, and there's other billionaires who have done that before. We've seen Dan Cote over in Nigeria more than once talk about the possibility of launching a takeover bid at Arsenal. He said he wants to do it. He says he will do it. He's been saying that for a few years now. It hasn't materialised. Will it be this year? Is this the time that these other very, very rich men across the world try and tempt Kroenke into doing business? Like I said, and I was speaking to Tim Payton from the Arsenal Supporters Trust about this. He said it's one thing trying to get Stan Kroenke to sell, but if you're just selling to another person who's quite similar to Stan Kroenke, it's a case of going, moving just from one place here to another place here that is still very, very similar. What he wants to see and what a lot of fans want to see is change brought in where fans sit and have power at the clubs, like the Germany model, the 50+1. And that's what a lot of them are really sort of campaigning for now. And so just moving from Kroenke to Daniel Ek, is that a good thing? Would that be a good thing, or do you want fans involved? Let me know what you think. What's your sort of end game out of all this? What do you want to see? Do you just want to see Kroenke sell someone else who might spend more money, or do you want to see Kroenke have to sell and fans coming in on the board and having a massive, massive say in how the club is run? Let me know, please, in the comments below. Okay, right, let's get on to it. I'll try to avoid it as much as I possibly could, but let's talk about the football last night. I mean, there's not much to talk about. It was rubbish, pretty rubbish. I thought Arsenal were a better team. They should have won, but in classic Arsenal style, they didn't, and they absolutely shot themselves in the foot again. I've never known a season where so many individual errors, like really bad individual errors, have cost Arsenal points. I think a lot of it is also the fact that Arsenal aren't putting these teams away, and so when you make errors like we saw last night at Billionaire, they prove to be very, very costly. And so as much as you can say they're unlucky, I think it's also their own fault for just failing to put teams away and failing to really put them under so much pressure. They were a better team last night, but they didn't create chance after chance. I think obviously they were missing Aubameyang and Lacazette, and that was a big, big factor. But they still had the chances. We had Saka's had chances in the first half. Danny Ceballos had one saved in the second half. Callum Chambers missed one. Martinelli had one saved. They had chances to score and to win this game. I mean, Everton won. They didn't have a shot on target in the second half, and yet they scored because of the own goal by Bernd Leno. And yes, it was an absolute howler from Bernd Leno. He's not having a good time of things at the moment. I think his confidence must be pretty shot. He actually made a decent save in the first half to deny Richarlison, but that one in the second half, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing when that went in. It's one of the biggest goalkeeping howlers I've seen in a long time. He could try to do that on purpose and not be able to do it. It was such a freak thing. Everton can't believe their luck because they really did absolutely nothing, especially in that second half. They're really poor. You think of these two games that Arsenal played against Everton. They've got no points, Arsenal, from the two games this season. And Everton have done barely anything to win those matches. They scored 3 goals against Arsenal in the 2 games. 2 of them were own goals. And it just sums up Arsenal's season. I think that I put it out on Twitter. I said that Bernd Leno moment sums up. It's just a classic image of Arsenal's season. Is that it was just so bad. And obviously there was a VR incident. Arsenal thought they had the penalty in the second half. It was at 0-0 at that stage, and Danny Ceballos was tripped, and then VAR ended up ruling it out for, again, the minutest of offsides in the build-up. It was about 12 seconds earlier in the build-up as well. I think Everton player even headed the ball away after that. So what happens with the phase of play? I couldn't even see it was offside. Looking at the lines now this morning, I still can't see how you can give that offside, but they did, and the penalty was ruled out. And obviously Mikel Arteta absolutely furious after the game because of that. This is what Mikel had to say. He said, well, this is because we asked him in the press conference, you look really agitated, really angry on this one. Why is that? And he said, well, this is because it is building and enough is enough. Today, to be fair, I've had enough. We had many of them and no one explains. When they explain, they say, sorry, it was a mistake, but unfortunately it's affected a lot of people. It's affecting our job and most importantly, our football club. And then he was asked, do you want someone to apologise? He said, yes, but what they do it behind a telephone. Said, I cannot understand it. I've been in football long enough and I can watch this incident 10 times. And if I want to find it, I cannot find it. And I agree with him on that. I mean, I've seen that. I've sat there and looked at that replay. I've watched it, even the freeze frame with the lines drawn. And I can't see how that is offside. How can you give that as offside? The technology isn't good enough to know when it's that close. The technology is not good enough to know when exactly the ball was passed or anything like that. And even with the line, it doesn't look like he's offside. It's like the whole shoulder, the elbow thing. And the line just looks level even then. And I just don't know how you can give it. It just looked really odd. And even then you look at the goal that Everton scored in the build-up to the own goal. Richarlison, was he offside in the build-up? Again, they drew the lines and it looked exactly the same as the Ceballos one. And yet Arsenal's penalty was overruled. Everton's goal was allowed to stand. It's madness, and it follows on from what happened against Fulham at the weekend with Ceballos' goal being ruled out for apparently Saka's toe being offside, and then Fulham getting the penalty, which wasn't offside, even though again it looked exactly the same when you put the lines. So I can understand why Mikel was so angry about it, and VAR is a joke. But I also do think Mikel may well have been using it quite a bit as an excuse after the game, because look, Arsenal have lost 13 league games this season now. It's another home defeat. They've now not won in their last 5 home games in all competition, losing 3 of those, drawing 2, scoring just 2 goals, not keeping a clean sheet in any of them. Lost 13 matches, lost the most amount of games at home this season in the league that they have since 1930. I mean, the numbers just stack up. It's really, really poor. And you kind of wonder in this one, you know, was Mikel kind of using this as an excuse to cover up from his team's poor form and poor results? I do think in a way they were unlucky. They've been unlucky. Yes, they could have got more out of these games. Like I said, the individual errors have cost them so much this season. But the fact is, they're not putting these games to bed when they should do, and that is why when these mistakes happen, they're proving so costly, because Arsenal haven't scored. They should have been out of sight already. They dominated that game for large periods against Everton, and yet they didn't score. So when an error happens like that, and errors happen in football, when an error happens like that and you haven't scored and you're level, then it proves really, really costly. You have to take care of things yourselves. You have to put the game to bed. You have to take your chances. And Arsenal just aren't doing that this season, and they're being made to pay for it at the other end. Because I thought on the whole, they defended very, very well yesterday. I thought Pablo Mari and Rob Holding were very, very good. I thought Callum Chambers was decent. And then just the one time when they got opened up a little bit in the second half, Everton score from it. It can happen. It can happen. That's why you've got to take your chances at the other end. You've got to score and put the game to bed. And if you're dominating, if you're on top in a game, you have to make it count. And Arsenal just haven't done that enough. They haven't scored enough goals, especially at home. So I think Mikel, while he was right to single out VAR, he really needs to hold his hand up as well and accept that things just aren't going well enough. They're not acceptable, these results, for Arsenal Football Club at the moment. Obviously, there's lots of talk since this of Arteta out. I don't think that's certainly not going to happen at the moment. They've got the Villarreal semi-final coming up. It's not going to happen. I don't think it happens in the summer. I think it's very hard. Arsenal have bought into this whole project of we're going to have a total rebuild. We're going to start again. We're going to bring in a young manager. We're going to rebuild. It's going to take 4, 5, 6, 7 transfer windows. I just can't think that they would make a change this summer despite these results, despite these poor performances. Look, Mikel couldn't be upset if he got sacked. There's no way he could complain if he got sacked this summer. The results speak for themselves. It's not been good enough. Arsenal's league position, they could be 11th at the end of this weekend. It's not good enough. So Mikel could not complain if he got the sack. I don't think any of us could say, oh, that's a disgraceful decision by Arsenal. Far from it. As I said, the results speak for themselves. But I just think that this is a long-term thing that Arsenal have bought into. And if they'd made a change this summer, they'd have to start it all over again with another man. You'd be left with another mismatch of a squad with Arteta's, Wenger's, Emery's players in them. I think they've decided like we're going to have a go at this one for 2-3 years and see where it takes us. So I'd be very surprised if Mikel goes. I also think this is a bit of a one-off season as well. You look at Liverpool. I mean, they lost 6 home games in a row. It's a freak season. I think he'll get given the summer, and he'll get given certainly the start of next season to see how things go before Arsenal consider making a change with him. If results continue and Arsenal continue to play like this next season and continue to fail to win games and sit on this level of performances, then he'll get sacked. He'll have to get sacked. You can't be manager of Arsenal and oversee results like this on a consistent basis. But I just still feel we're a little bit away from that right now. Okay, before we go, let's quickly talk about, obviously, Bernd Leno. Terrible mistake from him. It'd be interesting to see if Matt Ryan starts against Villarreal, because I do think Leno's confidence is pretty hit at the moment. Mikel saying after the game, I said that we lost the game for different reasons. One, for things we can do better and we should do better, and the other that we cannot control. Again, that error by Bernd. I make many mistakes, and everybody that is involved in any sport will make mistakes, and it's part of it. Unfortunately, he was asked if the protest had an effect on things. He said, no, we knew that was happening. We knew that our fans wanted to express their feelings. We made preparations for that in mind. So it's not an excuse. We lost the game because we had to define the game in the crucial moment. We had openings or chances, no clear chances, but we didn't take any of them. And then we conceded an own goal. Obviously, when we did earn the right to score with the decision that was taken away from us. Player ratings before I go, just rattle through these. Obviously, I didn't get time to do it last night. I'm going to start with Bernd Leno. I'm going to have to give him a 3. He made a good save in the first half, actually, Bernd, but that error at the end, he's lucky to get a 3, to be honest, on that. It was such a pitiful error. So he gets a 3. Chambers and Holding, I'm going to give a 6 each to. Mari, I'm going to give a 7. I thought Mari was probably Arsenal's best player. I'm going to give him my man of the match. I thought he was very, very solid in centre-back. Xhaka, I'm going to give a 5. I'm going to take away a point just because he got beaten far too easily in the build-up for that goal. It certainly looked like a midfielder playing out of position for the way Richarlison skipped past him for that one. Partey, I'm going to give a 6. Not Partey's best of games, but I think you still look at what he had to do defensively. He did it very, very well. Obviously, a lot of people pointing out the couple of skied efforts as well that he did have in the game. But when you look at what he did sitting in front of the back 4, most interceptions 2, possession game 14. The next highest was Granit Xhaka with 7. Most blocks as well with any Arsenal player. So he did his job protecting the defence, and he did it very, very well. It's just going forward at the moment, his confidence seems to be really, really low, especially when it comes to taking a shot. So I'm going to give Partey a 6. Ceballos I'm going to give a 6. Saka 6. Smith Rowe 5. Pepe 5. And Nketiah 5. I actually thought Nketiah worked really, really hard in the first half. He was pretty impressive, but he failed. He faded out of the game somewhat after that. So there are my player ratings for today. That is my video for today. Just everyone, enjoy the sunshine out there. It's Saturday. Try not to let Arsenal get you down too much. And once again, as I said at the start of the video, anyone who was involved in that protest yesterday, well done for making it such a special, special moment. Speak to you soon.